Hey, I'm Chris Zepp from Make Everything, and today I'm going to show you how to preserve fall leaves and foliage behind glass and make this beautiful and simple shadow box. Check it out. Okay, so to start this project, you either need to do a little bit of kind of forethought and get some leaves. You can have pressed them in advance or just kind of pull them off a tree. These 3 maple leaves I got from across the street from my house. There's like a little lot that has a really nice maple tree that in the fall gets beautiful, gets these nice red and yellow. And these are a little bit worn and they're starting to degrade, but I still think they're gonna make a nice little arrangement with the 3 of them. So again, these are just a regular leaf. You can press them in a book, you can press them between 2 pieces of wood, whatever works, or you don't have to press them at all and you can just use them green right off the tree and you can accomplish this the same way. Okay, so the next thing that you're gonna need is 2 pieces of glass. Now you could use plexiglass for this, but I like using just regular plate glass. This is about 1 inch thick. I got this from my local hardware store. And these 2 pieces are just pieces that I had. I was gonna make another frame with them. So they're sort of randomly sized. They are gonna work out perfect for what I'm trying to do. Basically, I want to arrange these 3 leaves so that all 3 of them are kind of nested together on here. So these pieces of glass are gonna work out fine. This one, 13 by 19. And this other piece of glass is 20 by 14, so I'm gonna have to cut 1 inch off of that. Now, the thing about glass, people are afraid of it. They think it's difficult to cut. They're not sure what to do. Cutting glass is really easy. You get yourself a simple glass cutter like this, basically mark out your lines and score it and snap it. It's not difficult. There's really no reason to be afraid of it. But if you don't feel comfortable dealing with it, I know my local hardware store and I think even some Home Depots will custom cut a piece of glass for you. So to cut this piece of glass down to size, it's just got some sawdust on it. We're gonna take the other glass that we're gonna use, the 13 by 19, just get it on there. And I'm just gonna use a Sharpie to draw some lines. Now it's not super critical that these pieces of glass be exactly the same size because at the end of the day, we're going to be putting a frame around this that's going to have a recess in it. So if the glass pieces were off by a little bit, that wouldn't be a big deal. Now, when I cut glass, I always like to have it on a piece of cardboard, just because if there's anything on the table that might, potentially chip it or scratch it, the cardboard's usually softer. So I'm going to be using this little square to guide my glass cutter. And basically, I'm just going to run this across it and snap the glass. That's as easy as that. So now that I've got my piece of glass cut, I'm going to basically decide the dimensions of my frame. Now, since my glass, like I said, is 13 by 19, I want the frame to have a little bit of a rabbet cut in it so that the frame will recess the glass within it. Now, I'm going to want that recess to be about 1/4 inch. So if I take my final dimensions of 19 by 13, and you imagine 1/4 inch on either side, that's 1/2 inch altogether, and that brings my frame inside dimensions down to 18.5 by 12.5. So that's what I know the inside of my frame needs to be. So my frame is just going to be a box with mitered corners that I'm going to do over on the miter saw. And I know the inside dimensions are, like I said, 18.5 by 12.5. So let's cut that up. For this, we're going to use a solid maple that I just picked up at Home Depot. I think it'd be nice to use maple because the leaves are from a maple tree, so it'll all sort of blend together. Okay, so now that we've got our leaves laid out, I'm basically just going to take this second piece of glass and lay it over it, just temporarily. And now what this is going to allow me to do is measure the thickness of the glass with the leaves in between it. Because what we have to do now is we have to take the frame and we have to rip a rabbet cut in it. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to have that glass slip in there nicely. We want it to stay tight, but not too tight, because with these leaves and the stems especially, there is creating a little bit of a gap between the two pieces of glass. Okay, so in this case, I'm basically getting about 3/16 of the thickness between the two pieces of glass with the leaves. So I'm gonna more or less do 2 cuts with my table saw. Before I do it though, I am just gonna do a little bit of a test cut with a scrap piece of wood and make sure that it slides on there nice. I'm not gonna use a dado stack for this. I could, but honestly, this is really easy to accomplish with just a regular table saw blade and making 2 cuts on each piece of material. And I'm trying to keep this project as simple as I can, so let's just get over there and check that out. So it's important here to make the height of the blade the same 1/4 inch that we decided that we were going to make the frame smaller by. So I'm going to make mine just slightly bigger than a 1/4 inch, just so that my glass has a little bit of room to move around. Also, if there's any movement in the wood, I don't want the glass to be in the way. I'm just using a small piece of scrap material to make this test piece. Perfect. So basically what I've got here is a tight enough fit that it's going to hold this glass really nicely, but not too tight that I'm forcing the wood onto it. So basically I'm going to use this as my setup block to set the first side of my cut by making sure the blade is touching one side of this, and then the second side of my cut on all 4 of these pieces of frame material. Now I'm also being careful to make sure that this kerf cut is in the center of this material. And at about 2.5 inches at 1 1/4 to the dead center, that's what I'm looking for. So I'm going to make sure that I set the center of my blade here to 1 1/4. Now I was very mindful when I put these pieces down to put them in the right direction, so that when I come back now and I move my fence over, I know that I'm going to wind up in the right spot. Okay, so we've got our frame pieces cut and we've got our 2 pieces of glass. I already got some of that Sharpie off of them, but now I want to make sure they're really clean so that when I put the leaves on them and I close them back up, I don't have to worry about any fingerprints or anything. So now for this, I'm just going to use some Windex, and I'm actually going to put on a pair of rubber gloves, and I'll probably wind up wearing these rubber gloves for the rest of the assembly just because it'll be that much easier to keep the fingerprints from getting on the glass as I'm doing the rest of these little steps. So basically, I'm just going to take this Windex and clean this glass really nicely so that I don't have any streaks or fingerprints on it. So now this is going to be my back. Basically now what I want to do is take these leaves and lay them out in a way that they fit on the glass nicely. Give me a nice layout, and then what I'll do is I'll actually take a little bit of hot glue and I'll glue them down into place so that they can't go anywhere when we assemble this. Now, I kind of like to just put them on there in a way that looks sort of natural, and we'll highlight the colors and the different aspects of them. So this seems fine to me. I'm just going to take a hot glue gun and I'm just going to put little dabs of hot glue underneath each of the leaves and try and put them back in the exact same spot. So now with our leaves glued down into the place where we want them, we can take this second piece of glass and lay it on top. Now I'm putting the side that I cleaned down because the outside is no problem. We can clean it later. And more or less, that's the layout that we're going to be dealing with. And now we just have to go ahead and get the frame on there. So the frame pieces, like we did before, we rabbited them out. And these are more or less going to lock in this glass, and it's going to keep it together really nicely. So basically this is just going to act as my test assembly. I know that my frame is going to fit. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take some regular Type-On 2, I'm going to put it in these corners, and then I'm just going to use some 23 gauge pin nails to nail this thing all together. All right, super simple project, really easy, extremely scalable. You could use different size leaves, you could use a ton of leaves. In this one, it's 3. In this one that I made 3 years ago, this is a single leaf. You can see how well being in between those 2 pieces of glass preserves it. These will last a very long time. They make a fantastic gift. People love these. They're great to hang on the wall. They look great on a table. If they have any light behind them, you know, you really get to see the accents and the natural beauty of these things. You know, leaves like this, especially if you're in the Northeast like me, I'm in New York, these are all over the ground. They get composted and thrown away, so why not make something nice for your home out of them and sort of highlight the season. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, leave them down below. I'd be happy to answer them. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at MakeEverythingShop for behind the scenes stuff and just sort of little bits of information and stuff I do throughout the week. If you like this video, please share it. Let other people know that this is a project that maybe they would enjoy. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content. Again, I'm Chris Zepp for Make Everything, and I hope to see you on the next video.